This lecture is going to focus on the challenges of the Articles of Confederation. According to College Board, this is topic 1.4. We are going to explain the relationship between key provisions of the Articles of Confederation and the debate over granting the federal government greater power, formerly reserved to the states. We're going to focus on specific incidents and legal challenges that highlighted weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation are represented by the lack of centralized military power to address Shays' Rebellion and a lack of tax law enforcement power. To understand the Articles of Confederation, it's important to consider the previous 20 years before the ratification of the Articles of Confederation in 1781. Prior to 1763, the colonies were very used to self-rule, meaning they were very used to doing their own thing, governing themselves, without much oversight from King George and the British government. However, in the proclamation of 1763, with the end of the French and Indian War, the British government and King George realized they needed to increase the oversight over the colonies, specifically through the use of taxes. And so one of the major issues and rallying cries in the Revolutionary War is the concern of taxation without representation. It was the belief of the colonies that you cannot tax the colonies unless they actually had a say in the British government. And so the concerns of the many different taxes and the abuses by King George lead to the First Continental Congress of 1774. It leads to the initial conflict of the Revolutionary War and the Battle of Lexington and Concord, the Second Continental Congress of 1775, and finally in 1776, the Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, signed by the Founding Fathers, is where the colonists officially say King George and the British government have violated the natural rights of the colonists. Therefore, the colonies have a right to leave the British government. Ultimately, the war is fought. Many deaths occur. However, the end of the Revolutionary War in 1781 leads to the fact that the colonists finally need to start governing themselves and creating their own government. And that leads to the Articles of Confederation of 1781. The major concern of the Articles of Confederation and the Founding Fathers is that they do not want to create a central government that would abuse the people again. They had just fought a Revolutionary War to fight off a super strong central government in King George and the British. They do not want to recreate that. So the Articles of Confederation go the opposite direction. And they want to give each individual colony, now state, as much power as they can. A League of Friendship among 13 independent states is what the Articles of Confederation were. There was no central power. There was very little power in the central government, and it took effect in March of 1781. But ultimately, our understanding is that the Articles of Confederation failed. In the 8 years that the Articles of Confederation was the central government, the Founding Fathers realized that it was creating more problems than creating solutions. But there were two main reasons why the Articles of Confederation failed. Number one, a lack of centralized military power to address Shays' Rebellion. Shays' Rebellion was a group of Western Massachusetts farmers who were upset at issues of tax and issues of monetary policy, that Western Massachusetts was really struggling with an economic panic. And so they were upset with that, and they wanted to create the change and force the government to give them better assistance. There also is a major issue is a lack of tax law enforcement power. Ultimately, the Articles of Confederation gave the central government no power and very little power to tax. And the central government needed to tax because they needed to raise money to pay off certain debts. And so without those powers and the concern of putting down rebellions, the Founding Fathers realized that they actually had to go and change the Articles of Confederation, which lead to the Founding Fathers coming together in the Constitutional Convention with the initial goal is to amend the Articles of Confederation. However, after conversations begin, they realize amending the Articles would not be sufficient. Therefore, they need to scrap the Articles of Confederation and create a brand new framework of government. With that in mind, that's going to be the end of this lecture. Our next topic will focus on the debates at the Constitutional Convention to create our new Constitution, which will replace